the last 2 years have given us a lot of words, most of which we probably never want to hear again for a long time. Pivot, cohort, lockdown, variant, and if you're Canadian, moistly. However, we'll try to go gentle and not burst your mood, as we're going to be saying bubble a lot, because we're about to prove to you that the Netflix comedy The Bubble is not that bad. Welcome to this edition of It's Not That Bad, the podcast that looks for A grades in B movies. And today we are tackling the Netflix classic already. Can't really say that because it was only released on April 1st. We're talking about the Judd Apatow comedy, The Bubble. And joining me as always is my beautiful wife, Carrie. Carrie, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Now that I think of it, like, you're my bubble partner. So
we are in our podcast bubble, ready to talk about The Bubble. And it's funny because when we initially saw the trailer, I know we were just like, okay, we have to see this movie. This is definitely our kind of comedy. And then we watched it and we enjoyed it. And then we saw how it was rated. So when you realized that we could talk about this film, what was your initial reaction to the critic response to this?
Oh my God, this movie is by definition a very Carrie movie. It is perfectly perfect in every way. And I don't know. I don't know why the critics couldn't see that, but I'm happy to be here today to defend The Bubble.
I do have a few theories as to why the critics maybe didn't enjoy it as much, but we're going to get into that a little bit later in the podcast. But before we dive into The Bubble, and no, not a bubble bath, just into The Bubble, it is time to take this comedic Judd Apatow classic, or soon-to-be classic, and trailerize it. There's nothing funny about trying to do something in a pandemic, unless that something is making a movie about fighting imaginary dinosaurs while isolated in an England hotel with people you probably don't like, working from a script you definitely don't like, all in the middle of a global pandemic that you don't like. Watch as these beasts of acting drive a sequel right off the cliffs of sanity in a straight-to-streaming film that forces you to remember that 2020 really sucked. Judd Apatow assembles an all-star cast in a film on Netflix, an app that cares so much about you, it has asked, "Are you still there?" more in the last 2 years than actual humans have. The Bubble. Rated R.
Is it really rated R?
It is rated R.
Why?
Let's see here. Drug humor, a lot of coarse language, the vomit scene, which you had to turn away from multiple times as we have watched this.
Okay, but R?
R. I think it's more so. I think it's more so for the drug usage in the film. I mean, that's kind of boobs, okay, but there's no boobs in this. There's I don't even think there's any nudity in this. There's a lot of swearing, but swearing is swearing. I think it is mainly the drug use in this.
No, there's a very mild sex scene, but that's...
Yeah, that sex scene is PG to begin with.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's the drug use that kind of pushes it into the air, because there is a pandemic's worth of drugs being used by the cast in this film, and it's a lot, and I'm surprised that none of them died from the drug use, at least the characters did.
Well, one of them looked like he should have been rightfully dead like 3 times over, but they brought him back, so...
There were so many drugs used in this film that Motley Crue sat there and said, I can't look. I can't. I just can't.
What was their total day count?
Oh, it was in like 167 or something like that.
Over 167, yeah.
It was a high number, which is kind of funny because when they made this film last year, they made it in less than 2 months. So they made it in less than the time that obviously, the part of the comedy is the fact that they're stuck at this hotel forever.
But what I discovered really funny is that the filming of this, like the storyline, is basically inspired by what they did to make the upcoming Jurassic World Dominion film. But basically, they filmed that whole new Jurassic Park, Jurassic World film that's coming out soon by quarantining their cast in a bubble in a hotel in order to be able to film a very large dinosaur franchise flick that definitely has way too many entities into it. So, like, when you realize that this was kind of like the inspiration for writing The Bubble, you sit there and go, oh, this makes even more sense now.
Oh my God, literally my jaw is on the floor right now. It makes, and I love this movie even more because I know that now.
Like,
so thank you.
If you thought some of the freakouts that we heard about, from Tom Cruise on the set of the Mission Impossible film that was being done or filmed during the pandemic were bad, the freakouts in this film are so much more, and they're so much more fun. This film stars, and I almost feel like I should make a list of who it doesn't star, because there are a ton of actors, like quality actors in this. Stars Karen Gillan, Pedro Pascal, David Duchovny, Leslie Mann, Maria Bakalova, Keegan-Michael Key, Fred Armisen, Iris Apatow, and it's the cinematic debut of Galen Hopper. The last name should sound familiar because she is the daughter of Dennis Hopper. But you also have appearances in this film by Rob Delaney, Kate McKinnon, Benedict Cumberbatch, Beck, John Cena, Daisy Ridley, James McAvoy, and I'm sure there are more that I'm probably missing. But as you can see, this is one of those, hey, let's all go hang out together with Judd Apatow in a hotel and make a film for 2 months, and it sounds like a lot of fun. I mentioned that this is directed by Judd Apatow, and if you are unfamiliar with him as a director, he's the guy behind Knocked Up and The 40-Year-Old Virgin. However, as a director, this is his lowest rated film as a director, because it sits at a 34 Metascore, and on Rotten Tomatoes it has a 35% audience score and a measly 22% tomatometer. Really, the only time it's gone lower, and he hit one movie lower as a producer, the Harold Ramis directed Year One, which starred Jack Black and Michael Cera, which I'll admit I have not seen, and I'm probably thanking my lucky stars that I haven't seen that one. So this is, arguably it's a bomb, and we can't even touch on the box office because it went straight to Netflix. So knowing all of this, how much of going straight to Netflix, how much of having such a high rated comedy film passed and then putting this out, how much did the critics take a look at all of that in coming up with their score, or did they just take this on the face value of it?
All I can say to that is that I wonder if it's a little too late. I wonder if the movie was released in the thick of the pandemic, or at least by the time we got to the, I don't know, 4th to 6th round of lockdowns, maybe it would have been a little more timely. Now it was released kind of at the tail end. So either A, maybe everybody is just completely done with the idea, or they're off to work and no longer watching Netflix, binge watching, whatever the suggested trending list of movies is. I think that this movie would have definitely been better served if it had a theatrical release.
I think there comes possibly, but I think there's also a point of, I would still put this film into a time capsule because it does very much encapsulate some of the things that we've had to go through over the past 2 years. But I do think there's an aspect of this where, we have talked about Staged on this show a number of times because it is arguably our favorite show over the last 2 years. And the thing with Staged is that, it's clearly a pandemic setting. By the way, if you have not seen Staged, you are doing yourself an absolute disservice. It is arguably the most 2020/2021/2022 of shows that ever 2020'd, but it's still funny and it doesn't make you feel like the weight of the pandemic because it is so funny and irreverent and just so much fun to watch. This is also funny and I don't know if I would say irreverent, but it's definitely funny to watch. But when Staged came out, everything was kind of new about the pandemic and we were still maybe second wave and it wasn't as, we weren't so sick and tired of it. This movie now comes out as we, at least here in Canada, we are entering the 6th wave of this, with new variants popping up. And, and I understand that people are tired of the pandemic and everything that kind of goes along with it and the changing face of the virus that we're dealing with here. And I think you're right. I think if this had come out, even I would say like September, October kind of thing, before Omicron hit. If this had come out before Omicron, then I think, yes, absolutely, this would be much more well received. And I think, by coming out, post Omicron and now in the middle of the Omicron XE or whatever, Microsoft Windows version of this thing that we're on right now, it's a sad reminder that we're not quite out of it yet. There are some things that are very laugh-worthy because we've all kind of gone through the things that these actors go through. Not all the drugs, mind you, but some of the things that they had to go through as far as pandemic precautions of doing things. But I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right in that. Maybe 6 months ago, it's a bit more well received. And I think too, and maybe you'll disagree with this, there is a stigma about movies that go straight to streaming, like straight to Netflix. I mean, I think there are exceptions to the rule, like The Adam Project, which was an absolute gem of a film with Ryan Reynolds and Mark Ruffalo. But there are also, there's a litany of movies that have gone straight to streaming that definitely should have gone straight to streaming. Maybe not on Netflix, maybe on Tubi. Nothing against Tubi, but I think there is a quality difference, and I would still defend things that go on Tubi. But is there a stigma? Do you think? If a movie's going to the theater, you kind of think more highly of it as opposed to something that premieres on a Netflix.
I can see that side of it, but generally, those movies that don't do well in theaters, that's usually my favorite type of movie. Again, it falls under, we had spoken about the blockbuster seven movies in 7 days. 7 days. And some of those, that we would find in the 99-cent bin or whatever the case would wind up being my favorite movies. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, maybe it's just me and I'm broken, but I tend to like the underdog movies.
I will say there is such a thing as a very Carrie movie, and trust me when I say I'm sure some of those very Carrie movies will come up on the show. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Soul Plane. Oh, I went there. I went there. But before we go down that road in a future episode, we do need to get to the breakdown of the bubble. And we need to start kind of at arguably the top of the billing. Karen Gillan in this film. I think she is an unheralded great comedy actress that's, with Doctor Who, it kind of got a little bit more of that action kind of feel, especially when she was cast as Nebula in the Avengers, and then Jumanji I think really started to show her comedic talents. We will forgive her for Selfie because that's just working with a bad script. But how was Karen Gillan as Carol in this to you?
Oh my God, I loved her. I thought she was perfect. And it was actually very similar of a character I found to her role in Jumanji, where, she was, arguably, she really was one of the main characters. But I think, she's just, it was so brilliant. She's really just trying to do her job and, do the best for her family and get back to her family. And then, as the days go on, the madness sinks in. And I really loved what I love about The Bubble. If you haven't seen it already, spoilers here, it does begin with all of the actors going straight into a 5-day quarantine, however many days it took.
Like
for
14-day quarantine.
Was it 14? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole premise, like, because the whole thing is set in, like, I guess, October 2020. So everyone goes into 14-day quarantine, and she's got to spend all that time alone in a hotel room with nothing but her thoughts. And yeah.
And you see that descent. Like the first day she's eating a salad, by day 5, she's shoveling spaghetti into her mouth. Like, you know what? She was funny. She was, she really made you feel for her and the other actors by the end of it. And yeah, the fearless ringleader.
Well, I like the fact that her, Carol stepped away from the Cliff Beast franchise, didn't appear in Cliff Beast 5. So the fact that she's coming back for Cliff Beast 6 because her previous film was an absolute bomb, and there's some resentment from the rest of the cast. The fact that she's back. She's trying to jump back on the Cliff Beast bandwagon and ride those dinosaur coattails kind of thing. Which I can't believe I just said dinosaur coattails on a podcast. But again, here we are. It's 2022, and we're talking about The Bubble. I really appreciate Karen Gillan as an actress. I mean, I thought she was great in Doctor Who. I still haven't had a chance to see yet another straight to Netflix, Gunpowder Milkshake. I haven't had a chance to watch that yet. I did see the trailer for her upcoming Duel film, which just looks fascinating. And I think you needed a strong actress to kind of take on that role, because she's almost like the not the focal point, but the center of everything that kind of goes around, because she was out of the franchise for a bit and then comes back in. There's so much story that goes on around her, and what her character goes through in the development of this film, because this film is the fact that if this film was ever made, I hope somewhere out there's a 30-minute cut of the film that comes out as almost like a quote unquote DVD extra, if you will, because it is so campy and so, it would be so bad, it would be so good.
Oh God, the dance scene.
Oh God. Crystal just did a TikTok with a dinosaur. Like, seriously.
Love it.
But the fact that, her character gets written down more and more and more the more she complains about the conditions at the hotel and all that. Like, there's just such an ebb and flow to her character, and yet she's still defiant, yet, defiant in that she wants to get it done. More so, I think, so she can leave the hotel, and just everything that kind of pushes that end shoot date further back and further back. I now wonder how long they were shooting on Jurassic World Dominion. Just wonder how long that went. Moving on to Pedro Pascal, the Mandalorian himself, in a very not Mandalorian type role. The more I watched him in this, the more I am counting down the days until the release of The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, starring him and Nicolas Cage. Is this the beginning of the Pedro Pascal look at me, I'm awesome party?
Well, I do have to say, I love that he was channeling his inner Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark. Like he was so funny. Just every scene that he was in was so enjoyable.
The fact that he was going around to seemingly everyone going, will you have sex with me? No. How about you? Will you have sex with me? I have not had sex in way too long. Like there's just such a desperation in his character, right? He's a simple man of simple needs. That simple need is sex. But there's just almost a quiet over the topness to Pedro Pascal. Obviously he's not, screaming like his future co-star Nick Cage all over the place kind of thing, although there is some screaming going on, but you just know that he's almost like a powder keg with the flame very, very close to the barrel of complete combustion. But you could see how he, as an actor, would fit in with the group. And that's the thing. You think about some of these large franchises with ensemble casts that do multiple films together, and you see that kind of comfortableness despite the differences in each of their own personal lives. And I like the fact that, they're isolated in the hotel in a bubble with no outside contact means not only do they have to live with each other, but they also have to live with themselves. And I think that's kind of like that almost scarier thing in that, yes, you're taking these, emotionally dependent actors, stashing them away, especially in a 14-day quarantine period, and they have to be alone with their thoughts. And you just see the manicness of each of those characters kind of come out in pure chaotic montage fashion, which is just way too much fun. He wasn't the funniest guy on the cast, but he definitely stood out to me as someone to keep an eye on, just because you knew it could start something. Let's move on to David Duchovny. I'm so used to him in a more serious role, of course, from X-Files fame. I think the last time I remember seeing him do a comedy was as the hand model in Zoolander. It's just, you don't necessarily think David Duchovny and comedy. Now, admittedly, I never actually watched Californication, the TV series on HBO, but I don't even know if that would be so much more comedy as it would be just just funny situations kind of thing. But Duchovny, for you, is he the right actor in that role?
I thought he was great in that role. I didn't find him actually that funny.
No.
But I think the role that he took on, so the backstory is that he was trying to overtake the script writing and become more of a screenplay. And he would be changing lines as they're filming a scene. And I think that kind of, I don't know, it caused a bit of a riff or maybe alienated himself. A lot of the lines he was writing were to better serve his ex-wife. That, he was...
The on again, off again.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of like, I think he was great in the role because it was that kind of like character that, you almost, I don't know. It's almost kind of like he's trying to micromanage the cast and kind of overtake the production.
There's a line that he says, and it's early on in the film when he's arguing about the script, and he says, "I'm the gatekeeper of this franchise," and I'm just like, you are the character that takes themselves way too seriously, and that's not the place you want to be when you're in Cliff B6.
I think he took on the role very well of, that kind of egotistical.
There's a grumpiness to him, which kind of, plays well as well. It almost reminds me, and again, full disclosure, we're not the people on set. We don't know these stories. We don't know any of this, but we have fun speculating. We talked a little bit in the last episode when we were talking about Roadhouse about Star Trek V. William Shatner written and directed, and it is it is the worst Star Trek film that ever Star Trekked. And I think it's one of those things where Shatner almost took it too seriously. Shatner got better as he started to take himself and that role much less seriously, but I almost wonder how much of Duchovny's character came from those kind of, I'm the actor and I know what's best for this film because I've been in every single, edition of this franchise. I wonder if there's a bit of Shatner in that.
Well, thinking also back to Judge Dredd, where Stallone no doubt was making decisions on that movie. Like that's, at least reportedly, as per IMDb. So, you have to wonder, how often that happens.
Well,
how commonplace.
Oh, I mean, we've done a number of films on this show already where you hear, so-and-so kind of took control and overrode the director. Eddie Murphy apparently did that quite a bit on The Adventures of Pluto Nash. And you have these actors throwing around their actor weight because their face is the face on the poster kind of thing. And, when you have a director that, maybe not be in the the most experienced of positions to be, to jump into a large franchise like that. It's, you hear the stories all the time in the trades and whatnot. And then you wonder how much of that is, inspiration for Duchovny to put into his character.
Well, first of all, I fully believe that the bubble is meant to take all of those little nuances of actors in character roles and kind of was written with the intention to make fun of the different dynamic.
The excesses of filmmaking, yes.
Right, offset. But I mean, what I just wanted to point out is there's also the flip side to that, where if an actor doesn't advocate for him or herself, then, they're also the face, and they also get, stereotyped or typecast, and people will judge them by the role that they play. I remember hearing Jason Momoa in an interview where, the interviewer was hating on him because of his role in Game of Thrones. Now, I personally haven't seen it, but apparently, I guess there was a scene where he was very violent towards women and legit, like he was basically having to defend himself as an actor.
Well, Khal Drogo in the first season of Game of Thrones, he's not a nice character. Taking Emilia Clarke's character basically for his own and really kind of having his way with her, rough sex scenes, that kind of stuff. And then, but eventually, Khaleesi, Daenerys, learns from their servant as well, ways to kind of, be for him. So there is a give and take, and I think it's one of those things where the critic probably took these clickbait type article headlines and surmised that. I mean, you see pictures of Jason Momoa and Emilia Clarke like today, still best of friends. And every report that I've seen from from the Game of Thrones set is that he was very caring and considerate of Emilia Clarke on set. So I mean, Jason Momoa, for everything I've heard of Momoa, he's like all the goods kind of thing.
Which is exactly why I think it's so unfair that actors get typecast for the character they're playing. Like, newsflash, they're actors.
Yeah.
They're given a script. They repeat the words that are on the page and give it character. That's what they do.
Yeah. It's okay to say, I love to hate you in this role, but I also love your ability to make me hate that character. Not you, make me hate that character. But you do see these reports of actors, taking themselves too seriously, taking the franchise and the characters their own, and everything be damned. And that was kind of like the nice play between Duchovny and the director, Fred Armisen. And I remember as we were watching Fred Armisen, you were like, why do I know him? Why do I know him? You probably remember him best as the Uber driver from Jay and Silent Bob reboot. But he was also the voice of Brainy Smurf in the Smurfs movies. And he's done a number of different roles in Euro Trip and Brooklyn Nine-Nine, very accomplished actor in a lot of different properties. But there was that dynamic because Fred Armisen's director didn't have a big filmography behind him. So here you have that director that's kind of tossed into, the sixth installment of Cliff Beast. And here you have David Duchovny, whose actor has been in every single Cliff Beast film. And you have that tete-a-tete between the two.
Well, I think another beautiful example is the character Sean Knox, played by Keegan-Michael Kay.
Yes.
Where every single movie that I can picture him in, he's always playing very much that positive, almost overly positive, spewing, yogic beliefs. And what I loved, the scene that made this movie for me, was where he was sitting down having a conversation with Karen Gillan, and he's, rehashing or just throwing out all these
word soup
positive,
exactly, yeah.
positive affirmations. And then you could tell that as he's talking, he doesn't believe it himself.
He stops believing his own bullshit. Yeah.
Yeah. And I absolutely loved that scene. I love that scene because it was kind of like, that's the typecast character I've always ever seen him play. And it was that pivotal moment where he was like, I don't believe it myself.
And there's a nice balance too between Keegan-Michael Key and David Duchovny in this. You can see that these guys, the fact that they've been, this is the sixth Cliff Beast film, and of course they've all kind of been together through the whole thing. So there's going to be a camaraderie between the actors because they're the ones who have to, dance in front of the green screen and, fight the Cliff Beast kind of thing. But yeah, there's that play on, if David Duchovny is the actor that's so full of himself, Keegan-Michael Key's character is very much the one who's, puts out such a false image of himself and then eventually does stop believing it. You almost wonder how much of Russell Brand is kind of in that as well, because, you take a look at Russell Brand's roles, Get Him to the Greek and then in Rock of Ages. And then all of a sudden he's doing, positive yogic stuff on YouTube, which then transition to very different videos on YouTube.
Turned very political very quickly.
Exactly.
When he was given his platform. And I'm very sad about that personally, because I had subscribed in the beginning when he was doing his Kundalini yoga and meditations and sharing that positivity with the world. And then, I don't know if it was, again, the madness brought on from however many lockdowns. But definitely, Anyway, that's a whole other Joe Rogan.
Oh, well, you know what the funny thing with Joe Rogan is that he kind of went like very conspiracy theory-esque. But if you go back to news radio, and this is kind of something with sitcoms as well, is that, the characters that are drawn up in like the first season or two are very much like, okay, here's the basis of this character. And then as the sitcom kind of goes on, a little bit of the person's real life maybe gets kind of drawn into the character. And I think I remember watching an interview with Tracy Gold talk about how her real life kind of got played out into some of the stories on Growing Pains. As news radio went on, Joe Rogan's character became more and more of a conspiracy nut, and it just makes you wonder how much of that is taken from his real life. I mean, the fact that his character loved the UFC as well, and then he eventually went on to become a UFC commentator,
I think yes, but I also tend to believe that there has to be a certain separation between the actor in real life and the characters that, again, they get typecast in playing. Mm-hmm. Whether a part of their personality shines through, or that's the part that they want to spotlight. Mm-hmm. It's so interesting, because then at that point you're looking at it like, are they acting, or are they, Christopher Walken as Christopher Walken in, or Gary Sinise as Gary Sinise in this movie, that movie, and the other. It's interesting. Like,
and as
you have to wonder.
The more you watch The Bubble, you realize that at first it's very much a comedy about the pandemic itself, and the what it took to make films and TV shows during the pandemic. Which, before I go any further, to anyone who was on a production crew during the pandemic trying to put together content and all the things that they had to go through on those sets in order to get content out, so we at home could sit and watch something and not feel like we're 14 days in a hotel with nothing but our own thoughts. Thank you to all the crews that made all the shows that we have watched over the last 2 years. They part of the joke is that, oh yeah, well, we're making stuff that's going to make people forget things. Guess what? There's a lot of people involved in a lot of shows and a lot of movies that did help us get through the last 2 years. And I'm not even just talking about the actors. I'm talking about the camera people, the DP, the editors, the graphics people, the voiceover talent in cartoon movies that help get our kids through the last 2 years. Like, as much as The Bubble is a spoof of both the pandemic and film production, I kind of maybe wish this was maybe a bit more explored, but somewhere down the road, there needs to be a documentary made on the behind the scenes people and the things that they had to go through in order to bring us the content that we are watching in the middle of a once in a century event.
Well, I think Marvel did that beautifully with after the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and Loki. Mm-hmm. They had the
assembled
specials,
yeah,
and you get to see all the actors, all the crew masked up, mm-hmm. gloved up, like you do get that sense of, okay, so while we're all home or in lockdown, there are still actors and crew that have to travel mm-hmm. to whatever location they have to quarantine. There's that moment of like almost the hotel scene where they're literally by themselves for 14 days.
Yeah.
And how do they entertain themselves? How do they keep like, how do they keep their sanity?
Yeah.
After being locked down.
I mean, there were enough studies and enough articles written about people who turned to comfort viewing. So binge watching old series like Seinfeld and Friends and How I Met Your Mother and things that made them happy in times that were not a pandemic kind of thing. But then you also had new content. I mean, we joked around earlier about the fact that, I remember, I think it was like the end of the first, of 2020. And it's like, congratulations, you finally watched everything on Netflix. And it kind of felt like that. And you can almost pinpoint like the phases of the pandemic through what you were watching. Like when this whole thing started, we went down Tiger King Road just like everybody else did. We ended up watching Bruise Brothers, which was a phenomenally, I wish that got picked up for a second season. Of course, recently we had Cowboy Bebop, which we've mentioned on the show a couple times as well. There have just been, and of course, like all the Marvel shows that came out and some of the Disney Pixar stuff that came out as well. Like there's just so much good content that was made over the last 2 years. And, as much as this movie makes fun of some of the excesses of that, I think also in a weird kind of way, it also celebrates that. Just know if you film crews around the world, you are very highly appreciated by two goofs in a basement with a couple of microphones who do their best to try to point out the good things in poorly reviewed movies. Not bad movies, poorly reviewed movies.
Did you just call me a goof?
Yeah, but you're my goof, so it's all good. we're goofs together.
Wow.
All completely. Let's continue on with.
Can we go back to where you were saying I was right?
No, but you can go ahead and replay that part of the podcast all you want. You now have it on a recording. I can just see you now trying to take the file and make it as your ringtone. No, you're right. To the phone. It's okay.
On repeat.
Leslie Mann, who of course played David Duchovny's wife in this, felt bad for her hand. I'm not going to say what happened, but you have to watch the movie. Obviously, she's a Judd Apatow staple, you would think, seeing as how she's his wife. But it's one of those things where she just brings such a comedy, comedy gold to a Judd Apatow set. And I like the dynamic between her and Karen Gillan. Like when Karen Gillan shows back up on set, and it's the, I'm happy you're here, but I'm not happy you're here, and I'm mad at you, but I'm not mad at you, and it's very much one of those. She's happy that Carol's back because it kind of maybe feels like old times, but she's pissed off because Carol went away and wasn't in Cliff Beast 5. Like there's a sense of betrayal in there, and I think she plays it perfectly.
I mean, she was definitely a great actress, but I don't know. She left me hating her character. I found that she was the high maintenance diva of the set, and I just could not stand her. Like she just seemed so fake in every transaction with every single one on set, with the exception of Duchovny.
Which there's a love-hate relationship there too, yeah.
Right, but at least with him, she was genuine. Everyone else, she was either incredibly annoying or incredibly fake, I found. And I don't know. I mean, she played it well.
You love to hate her in this.
I loved to hate her. She was the character that, when she was offset, I was kind of okay with that.
We just talked about Judd Apatow's wife. Now we need to talk about Judd Apatow's daughter, Iris Apatow, who played Crystal Chris in this, the TikTok celebrity that is brought into the Cliff Beast franchise to bring that youthful vitality to it. And, this could have been, just a very one-dimensional character. But I found in Crystal, you had, a content creator who is pumping out content all the time, but not happy about it. Like, there's this whole scene where she's saying like, sometimes I want to stop, but my mom tells me if I stop, then everyone will forget me. There is such a loneliness in Crystal that, it was underplayed, but definitely played the way it should have been played.
I thought it was absolutely brilliant too for the time, because how many different channels or new content that was really of any time in history. If someone's going to start creating their own content, their own channels, here we are.
I was about to say, says the woman currently in a basement on a microphone making content for people to listen to.
But it was the time to do so.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think her character played very well into this movie. It was so poignant because it was exactly what the cast of actors needed. I think the fact that she was a self-made internet influencer, celebrity, self-made celebrity,
but also aware of the fragility of that celebrity as well. Like, yeah, you got 100 million followers, but you say one wrong thing and all of a sudden they're all gone. They're all gone. And the fact that, she was so focused on making content that she didn't have any friends, to the point of, she befriended Galen Hopper, Carla, on set, unbeknownst what Carla's ulterior motive is. But, you just see that dynamic of someone who's, been pushed to work so hard to get where she is, but is she happy? And that plays out really, like, all of a sudden, like, she's on a film in a hotel in the middle of England, trapped for God knows how long with people she doesn't know and never done a film before. And her mom thinks the dinosaurs are real, and like, but she plays it there's a vulnerability to her, and it brought more dimension to what could have been a one-note joke, but it was more of a symphony of a character than just that.
Can we just take a moment to talk about the two actors that played as the dinosaurs?
Oh, I unfortunately didn't write their names down, but oh my God, like literally the Statler and Waldorf of Cliff B6. And if you don't know who Statler and Waldorf is, go watch the Muppet Show. Like the two guys up in the balcony, why do we always come here? I guess we'll never know. Like, honestly, like, just the commentary out of the two of them in these absurd scenes. You're right. Like,
they were hilarious. Oh my God.
When you think about sports movies, some of the best lines come from the commentators who are calling the game. These two are them. This is Statler and Waldorf. This is Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. This is, Stephen Colbert and Jim Gaffigan in The Love Guru. They're there for those one-off lines. Even if you remember Eurovision, the commentator for the broadcast of the Eurovision concert had some of the best comedic lines in it. These two very much fit that same bill. Absolutely. But as well, there was the hotel staff. And I'm just going to kind of run through the main four ones here. You had Maria Bakalova, who most people will remember as Borat's daughter in the second in Borat's subsequent movie film. You had, and again, I am going to apologize if I butcher some of these names, so please forgive me. I'm just an idiot in the basement. Harry Trevalden as Gunther, Samson Kao as Bola, and Ver Das as Ranjan. These four, just some of the commentary that they create while all these actors are all around. Like Ranjan's like, don't worry, you'll hate them by the time we're done. Bola, I laughed so hard when Bola was getting his COVID test done, and the sticks going up the nose, like, you, I hate you. Oh, that wasn't so bad. Like, I mean, I really enjoyed him in the Death to 2020 and Death to 2021 that also came out on Netflix. Bola, I think, is everyone that went through a COVID test, though. Like, it was just I laughed so painfully in reminiscence of all those sticks that tickled my brain.
Okay, and how absolutely pivotal was his yoga class that he conducted?
Breathe out the virus. Breathe out all your worries about the movie industry becoming irrelevant. Bowl of way too much fun. And of course, I'm glad you brought up that scene because Guz Khan, who played Howie, that's the moment when he just bails on the everything. I so enjoyed Howie. Just that entire freakout scene during the yoga class. Like, you know, grabbing Duchovny by the balls and like, you know, his whole rant
running
about
through the field.
You're irreplaceable. And then he goes on to this rant about every single person who's played Batman. And they're like, well, not in the same film. It's like, thank you for, my, thoughts of my well-being. Like, such a good freak out. Like, you got to be really good to pull off a good freak out and not have it come off as, discount Nick Cage. And I think Guz Khan really brought the best of that into this. I just enjoyed watching him lose his ish on set. We mentioned at the beginning of the show that there are a ton of cameos, but without getting into every single one, I'm just going to ask you, of all the cameos in this film, which one stood out to you as the one most enjoyable?
Beck.
Oh God.
Beck. Oh my God. Love it.
You have to understand. So the whole thing with Beck is that they kind of like zoom him in while, I think day 112 or something like this, to do like one of those very, very corporate, oh, hey, I love Cliff Beast. It's my favorite movie.
It was also a pivotal time where the cast and crew, like everyone was at odds with each other.
Everyone's just done.
They were done. They were done. They wanted to go home. And here's, Kate McKinnon, like trying to host this, almost like a team building.
This very awkward team building.
And here's Beck to entertain you guys. Enjoy.
It's like anyone who has had to attend one of those virtual team building things where they have a guest speaker to talk about lots of positive things and pick up your spirits while you're stuck at home kind of thing or whatever. Yeah, this is that level of cringe, but it's a good level of cringe. I think for me, it was Daisy Ridley as the Peloton-esque girl in the mirror kind of thing. I mean, the fact that it's, we're talking Rey. We're talking Rey. I'm not going to call her Skywalker because then everyone who walked out of Star Wars Episode 9 is going to be like, she's not Rey Skywalker. No. She's Rey. She is Rey. Maybe Rey Palpatine. We'll give her that. And then, of course, you have the Mandalorian in this like complete drugged out scene where, just the it's such a nice, fun departure for Daisy Ridley just to see her kind of enjoy that moment. And then, of course, her cameo at the end of it where she's on the red carpet with Pedro Pascal and Maria Bakalova, and they're like, well, who's this? And like, this is so and so, and she's here to be with us. And, come on, come join, kind of thing. The fact that they got Daisy Ridley to do that, like, there's a ton of just fun cameos. I mean, John Cena's made sense for John Cena. Seeing James McAvoy just randomly appear on set and forget that he had a date with Carol, and couldn't even remember her name to begin with, like that was funny. And the whole, oh hey, let's get Professor X his wheelchair again. It's like, I play more than just him. Like that was kind of more making fun of James McAvoy. That's James McAvoy having a good laugh at himself. But Daisy Ridley's was, to me, I think the more fun. It would have been the Benedict Cumberbatch one had it not been in the trailer. And that's maybe one of the criticisms of this film, is that there was so much in the trailer that it's almost like they shot their load before you actually got to watch the film.
I disagree. I think the trailer, it had some pivotal points, but it certainly didn't give away the story, I felt. And it made you want to watch it because I think giving those little Easter eggs,
Oh yeah,
the Benedict Cumberbatch,
it definitely
scene.
drags you in, kind of thing. But I think the Cumberbatch sight gag, as far as the the whole drug out scene kind of thing, I wish. I don't mind if they had shown some of the other weird morphings in that whole drug scene. I wish they had saved the Cumberbatch for the film, and it reminded me of The Rundown with Sean William Scott and Dwayne Johnson, The Rock. They have this whole, basically they're up on peyote and the things get really, really trippy kind of thing. And that was one of those scenes that never made it to the trailer. So when you see that complete freakout scene in the movie, it's fresh. It caught you off guard. Those kind of moments need to be saved to experience during the film, because if you give away some of your best gags, and there was, I mean, maybe it's just me, but I felt like a lot of the gags, sure, the storyline was kind of briefly covered, and you had a general idea of what it was, but I think some of the best gags and best one-liners were used up in the trailer. So kind of like, The Hitman's Bodyguard. When you watch that trailer, like, oh, this is great. And then you realize, like, oh, they just gave away everything.
I still disagree, though. I think that for this movie, especially because it went straight to Netflix and maybe they felt that it had to defend itself, why not put enough in the trailer to gain interest? Why not? And I think that there were so many scenes that were pleasantly surprising as you're watching it, that I personally didn't feel that they gave too much away. I think they gave just enough to make you want to watch it. And I think, that whole drug out scene was so much
weird
better in its entirety in watching the movie than just the little clip that they gave in the trailer.
But the thing is, I think the Cumberbatch part was the funniest part of the drug out scene, of course, before you get to Pedro Pascal pretty much almost dying. By the way,
3 times.
Yeah, pretty much. But I think it's one of those things where, like, the parts that were funniest to me was when they were quarantined in their rooms, because those freakouts didn't make it into the trailer. So when you got to experience them for the first time while watching the movie, you find yourself laughing harder because you weren't expecting it. As soon as they start doing drugs all together in the hotel room, you're like, okay, here comes the Cumberbatch scene. The Daisy Ridley scene with the Peloton mirror, that was funny because we didn't know it was coming. John Cena as the socially distanced, stunt coordinator through Zoom kind of thing. That was funny because you didn't know it was coming.
It was even funnier that it was a stunt coordinator. Mm-hmm. Like, because that's kind of the job you have to be there in person.
Yeah. Beck was funny. He wasn't in the trailer. I mean, I think Kate McKinnon's funniest line was in the trailer. The whole, like, you pull a movie out of your ass. Oh, it's Minnie Driver. Oh, I love her. Like that. It's such a Kate McKinnon type role kind of thing in performance. But, her best joke is in the trailer. Beck is not. Beck was funnier when we watched the movie. And I mean, maybe that's just me, wishing that they didn't give away the Cumberbatch joke, but that's just me grumping along like David Duchovny. Just want to rewrite the trailer.
Would you like a Snickers?
Oh, you went there, didn't you? Hey, I am the guardian of that trailer, and I am going to recut it in a way that doesn't give away everything.
You're 2 steps from get off my lawn.
Oh. Oh, I can feel my back aching as you say those words. I'm going to go take my walker and go over in the corner, and you can continue on with the show. No. But I think that's one of the biggest things, though, is that, when you watch the film and some of the jokes are familiar because they are in the trailer, that may have taken away from some of the critics' score. But I do think at the end of the day, this film does need to go into a time capsule because the humor of it is very much of its time, very much like Staged. There are very few films I can sit there and say, this encapsulates the time that we are living in. And I think this is going to be one of those films where, I mean, the critic score is not going to change on Rotten Tomatoes. It's not. But I think the audience score will. And I think 5 years from now, 10 years from now, when people go back and watch this film, they're going to remember some of the absurdity of the moments that they themselves lived through in the last 2 years. I mean, I don't want to, put any of this in a humorous light because it has been horrible. The fact that we are currently living through a global pandemic, again, a once in a century thing, and people have lost their lives, and it is tragic. But in order to come out the other end, you have to kind of, be able to laugh at some of the moments to kind of help you mentally get through this thing. I think this movie is one of those moments, and I think in hindsight, people are going to appreciate it more. I would say this would be one of those films that would find a second life on home video, but I don't know if people actually go out and buy DVDs anymore. They probably don't.
I do have to say, it's not enough to just watch the preview or the trailer. Please
go watch the film.
Don't be misled by Jay's rant of the trailer. The movie is so worth the 2 hours that you could spend. And I do have to say too that The Bubble, I think so if you're looking for a movie to make light of the situation, it was so much funnier, so much better or well done, so much more well done than Death to 2020. I found that was very dry. It was very hard to watch because it was almost...
But it's a very different creator, though. Like, you have to keep in mind that Death to 2020 and Death to 2021 is done by the same guy who created Black Mirror. And then before doing those Netflix specials, he was doing the same thing as the New Swipe year in reviews over in the UK. And watching those, then watching Death to 2020 and Death to 2021 are more the same thing as those Newswipe specials, just with a bigger budget and some more recognizable names, which, again, Bola was in it. Loved him in that. But it's a different creator and it's a different feel. And I think that also might be some of the reason why the critics did not, review this favorably as far as The Bubble went, because most of Judd Apatow's films, while definitely have their moments, anyone who screams out Kelly Clarkson in pain, they can thank Judd Apatow for that moment because of The 40-Year-Old Virgin. But his comedies have traditionally had rooted themselves in a good, a good heart story, right? You felt for the characters in The 40-Year-Old Virgin. You felt for the characters in Knocked Up. This is not that film. This is not a heartfelt comedy. This is sight gags, drug and vomit humor, and like riff a minute kind of thing. And if you are expecting something like The 40-Year-Old Virgin, you are watching the wrong film. If you go in expecting a well done gag fest, you've come to the right place.
I love as well that it was very self-aware. Mm-hmm. I mean, that scene where Karen Gillan's character is trying to use the TikTok celebrity to, to put her plea out that she's being held captive. And really the whole scene was like, nobody's going to feel bad for you. Like,
no one wants to hear actors complain about, their problems on set. Like, suck it up. I mean, admittedly, there again, ulterior motive. Go watch the film. We're not going to spoil all of it. Although I feel like we kind of already have, but
But just the fact that, during that time, there are real issues.
Yeah.
As you said, it is a very dark time in our history, in our lives, and we're still kind of living it. It's recent history.
Yeah.
People were indeed dying from this virus. So as frightening and horrifying as that is, and the reason that you have to quarantine is that you don't know. I think one of the scenes that there was an illness going around set at one point. There was one positive case or two.
Many of you have tested positive for influenza. That's the good virus.
The good virus, right? But it was exactly that. And it was like, we've all lived it, right? It's like, oh, okay, I only have the flu, thank God.
Yeah, you get a sniffle and all of a sudden you're sticking sticks up your nose and you're zapping your forehead with laser thermometers, and you're telling everyone to stay 5 blocks away from you because you don't want to get them sick. And yeah, like some of the again, if you come out on the other side of this with a sense of humor about everything that you personally went through, or at least can look at some of those things, they say history is written by the victors, and if you are able to win against this whole pandemic, you will have the ability to look back at some of those moments and hopefully laugh. And I think maybe this movie then will be able to help you. Twitter has spoken, of course, as they always do. I'm going to first read off from my Just Another Nerd Show co-host, Kevin Hilsden. By the way, if you haven't heard my other show, Just Another Nerd Show, you can find that one on Twitter at Another Nerd Show and listen to it wherever you listen to your podcasts. His simple comment was, "It was that bad." And I firmly disagree with this because, again, if you're expecting the 40-year-old virgin, don't. If you're expecting just crass humor that is a little meta, I think you got the point at that point. But then there was also Switch the Envelope that chimed in with, "It has its moments, but struggles to find its footing between being a wacky genre spoof and a satire of big budget movie making. And yes, it definitely has its moments, but I counter that with, why can't you have both? Why can't it be both a wacky genre spoof, which it definitely is, and a satire of big budget movie making, which yes, it very much is. It doesn't have to be one or the other. There are times, yes, when it felt a little extra, like almost like they were padding the runtime a little bit, like one too many TikToks. I mean, the TikTok dance with the dinosaur, definitely hilarious. I do like the absurdity of everyone in the cast joining Crystal in their TikToks, because they just look so desperate for attention. Like even Keegan-Michael Key's character, like watching her TikToks and then doing this whole you're not in competition with your cast. You don't need 100 million followers. You're yourself. You're okay. Like there's a lot of meta in this, in everything that it's poking fun at, and I do appreciate that. But it comes time for the big moment. So Carrie, I'm going to ask you, who is your MVP of the bubble?
Oh my God, can't I choose them all?
No.
You know what? This cast, I thought it was so great. Karen Gillan, Rob Delaney, we didn't mention him, but he played her agent, Carol's agent.
Again, another small part that just added to the flavor of everything.
A small part, but I thought it was so pivotal when, she found out that if she had left the set, she would be on the hook for the hotel stay for now they're over like 100 days. So you could just imagine.
Just do the math.
The dollar figure was astronomical.
And this ain't no Motel 6.
Okay, but I think, and I do put out the disclaimer that Pedro Pascal, Keegan-Michael Key,
You are stalling.
David Duchovny, oh my God.
Stop reading IMDb and pick one.
Kate McKinnon. I am going to give my MVP Gold Star performance to Guz Khan.
Really?
I loved his final breakdown.
I would have lost money on that one.
Yes.
Because I was positive in my mind that you were going to pick Fred Armisen, the director. Because every time you watch, you seem to get the most laughs out of him. I would have lost money on that one.
Well, now I want to rethink my answer because he really was fantastic.
For me, though, I think you have to go back to the center of everything. Karen Gillan, again, really proving her comedy chops in this. I don't know if the movie is as funny without her. I mean, you could put a lot of different actresses in this. I think maybe Jennifer Aniston probably could have pulled it off, but I think Karen Gillan is very much, because she's not just a comedy actor. She's also an action actor. And, you know, as the old joke goes, get you a girl who can do both. And Karen Gillan really can do both action and comedy and seriousness, and the whole works. And the fact that her character is so pivotal to everything that kind of goes on around it. I had juggling. I had juggling this. Bola was on my list for MVP, and I was also considering Iris Apatow, but I think at the end of the day, it's got to be Karen Gillan. So before we wrap up, you know, we mentioned at the beginning of the show the actual tomato meter rating for this, and again, both are low. Both are low. We have to admit. So who do you agree with more, the 22% tomatometer or the 35% audience score, or do you go higher or lower?
I go higher. I at least give it a 54.
Really?
Audience score.
I mean, I can see it because I think it's fair to say it's not a perfect movie. I think it could be, some of the runtime could have been trimmed, and the trailer could be recut. I'm not mad. I'm not mad. I'm not mad. I'm not mad. I'm mad. I'm not mad. I'm not Benedict Cumberbatch. Recut the trailer. Hashtag release the whistle cut. We'll go with that. But I think you're right. I think it is definitely in that 50 to 60% range. It's not groundbreaking. It's not horrible. It's definitely worth the 2 hours you're going to watch it, and you will laugh. You will absolutely laugh. And if anything that we've said over the last hour about this film has come across, is that the last 2 years have proven that we all need a good laugh. So thank you to Judd Apatow, the entire cast, and everyone behind the scenes, especially in making this film. It provided us that really, really good laugh that we all need in 2022. Now, you know the deal. If you think there is a movie that is unfairly maligned, or one that is so bad that there's no way in heck that we can find anything good to say about it, please hit us up on Twitter at NotThatBadCast. Let us know. We'll watch it. We will dissect it. And we will do our damnedest to find the A grades and B movies. Carrie, lovely as always. Thank you so much. And to you, our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Until next time, this is It's Not That Bad. Take care.
Hey folks, Stefan Shirazi and Renee Richardson here from the Metallica Report.
And we are proud members of the Pantheon podcast family, where the best of music and podcasts unite.
We've got something pretty cool for you. We're giving away an exclusive Metallica merch package worth over $250.
That's a whole lot of Scary Guys, skulls, M72, and other sought-after Metallica swag. And we've made it easy for you to win. Follow and share the Metallica Report, and you're in the game. Go to pantheonpodcast.com/Metallica, enter your email, and hit that button to be entered to win.
And just like that, you're eligible for our monthly exclusive Metallica merch package.
And guess what, rockers? You can enter every month, so just do it. And while we love our global brothers and sisters, the lawyers won't let us ship outside the U.S.